So we've got Eden McDowell, and you are
Roei.
Roei.
Or Roei.
Right.
Whatever easier.
Okay. So how did you get started on your road to becoming an artist?
Okay. So I started my undergrad program in Maine at the Maine College of Art. But grew up with a family full of artists. My dad's a painter, and my mom is an art restorer. So it's been in my family, and I think I've just always been surrounded by art. But I've always been attracted to three-dimensional materials and objects since I was little. So
Okay. How little?
little.
I'd
say
3, 4.
Yeah, I would say from the age of like, I have memories when I was like 4 or 5 of just playing with clay and making shadow boxes and being more attracted to things that I could mold with my hands versus drawing or painting.
Well, in reading a little about you, I mean, it's a very interesting area because you sort of say that there's objects that you touch, you walk around, and various things that are non-functional.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do anything, yet they're recognisable and undefined. So, can you explain how you use that theme within your work?
Right. Yeah. So I'm fascinated and work mainly with like domestic materials or industrial materials. Like I'm attracted to plastics and shiny things and synthetic materials and household items too. I think growing up, there wasn't any really like heirloom furniture or like materials around me.
I'm just getting so we can show a picture.
Yeah.
Of you.
But to me, I think the kind of the kitschy or like tacky materials have just fascinated me. I think they are overlooked because they're mundane. So I think their banality is something that strikes interest.
So do you find it came up before in a previous conversation? I mean, do you find sort of beauty in the decayed and the discarded and the sort of unwanted and scarred and everything?
Yeah, not so much. I like wear, and I like to be able to see a past sort of usage of materials. I do like to dumpster dive.
What does that mean?
To kind of look for salvaged materials, stuff that's been torn out of homes, architectural pieces that have been salvaged. But then I also find beauty in brand new kind of manufactured materials. I often kid around that I could like probably make an entire show inside of a hardware store.
Have you had the opportunity to sort of do that?
Yeah, I actually was so in the US they have a store called Home Depot.
I don't know that.
It's a giant warehouse hardware store. It's really large and plasticky. But I was kicked out because I was making sculptures in the aisles with the gardening hoses.
Oh. So what did you sculpt?
I just kind of made assemblages. So like the hose had come alive and wrapped itself around a fake palm tree, and then that led to a pile
Were
of
you
faux.
asked to do this, or you just did it?
No, I just did it. Yeah.
Well, that's a sort of spontaneous art, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and then it's all very ephemeral. It comes down.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'd like to, because we're not going to cut it short, but we are pushed for time because it's their room and within the day. But I mean, I was quite interested in the feminism side and how that relates to what you're saying, because it seems that the feminism side is coming out in different ways, and because I don't know your work thoroughly,
Right.
I would like you to explain how that comes about, because I think that's interesting.
Yeah, so I think inherently a lot of the materials I work with read as masculine or are rigid in just their inherent material. But I think it's all about the treatment and the manipulation of that material. So I had a piece that I've made previously that was bottle cleaners that had been braided, and I've often worked with foam and steel and making them soft in a way and feminine.
How do you do that? I mean, in a foam I can understand, but how do you do steel?
Yeah, the steel is rolled into a curve, and I made a piece called Soft Arc, and it was a piece that, you know, reminisced minimalist sculpture, but in a feminine way. It's small and soft and cushioned. So I think it's all about the approach and the manipulation.
I mean, would we know it? You know, would we know there's a feminist angle to your work?
I think having just looking at the art, no, but to hear that it was made by a woman, there's an inherent approach, and they're domestic materials. So I'm thinking of women's work and how that can be labeled under this category of like knitting or treating items in a fine art way.
Well, knitting in England has become sort of quite a popular thing.
Yeah.
A popular hobby. And also I think I haven't done it, but I know there's lots of men that it's become sort of quite open. If men want to knit, they have knitting classes.
Yeah.
And you have sort of men and women, you know, having cups of tea, knitting away to their delight. You know?
Yeah, and that approach with with these rigid or industrial materials is to me a statement, because they are, you know, there's often times where I go into a hardware store and I'm asked if I know what I'm doing there, or
what do you say?
I go in with my headphones on, so I don't.
You don't listen.
Yeah, I just kind of, because it's all for art. There's no rules.
Okay. I mean, this may have been taken out of context, so I don't know whether it is or not. And if it is, then you know you've got to forgive me.
No, I think it's really powerful.
Because it was quite interesting. It said figuring out the structures, as it were, skin and bones, starting with the colour and the material, and then determining its form and scale. I mean, that sounds really like an interesting statement, like skin and bones and all that. So,
right.
What are you saying?
I think
there?
so. That is all in context to installation art. And I think for my show here at Artrooms, it really was knowing my materials and knowing where, you know, what my space was, and then from there creating the form and the structure. So there's a fluidity to the final form. There was no premeditated structure, but to kind of allow color to lead the way, or material. I know that when I was sewing the tarp for the duvet, it was like it had more control over my intention, so I just had to kind of go with what the material wanted.
Okay, well, that's a really good answer. You know, to that sort of statement. I'm going to sort of just go, you know, over there. So we've gone over here.
Hi.
Roei. What makes your work unique? What would you say makes your work unique? And was there a trigger that sort of made you wanted to be an artist? And the last artist actually came from Israel, and she has slightly relocated to Poland. So I mean, there's quite a nice link. So, what made you become an artist?
Well, to begin with, it actually was kind of an accident, because I grew up in a kibbutz in Israel. It's this kind of an idea of a utopian social environment that was relevant in the last century and then kind of declined. But there was nothing around that way of living that was connected to art.
Yeah.
I was not exposed to art in any way. Like the first time I actually went to a museum, I was probably 18 and on my own.
18.
So it was very late start for me. But I always had, growing up in this rural area of Israel, I always had a very strong connection to nature and my surroundings. And identity always kind of connected for me within landscape and my surrounding. So when I came across photography as a medium, it started to kind of connect, and I found my own, I'd say, voice, which is a bit of a cliche, but yeah, I could start looking at my surrounding in a way that I could actually be saying something that mattered for me. And it was a process of leaving the place where I grew up and moving to Tel Aviv and study in an art school, which felt very unfamiliar and uncomfortable at the time. Uncomfortable, because I was an outsider, I felt, in the industry, like the art scene. And then when I started to be comfortable in Tel Aviv, I decided that I'm too comfortable, and I took my stuff and left. And now I'm living in London, and I'm doing a master's degree here in London now. So,
I mean, if you can tell us of examples, because you've won a lot of prizes, haven't you?
I won a few prizes, not a lot, but
well, they're quite. I think you're probably quite humble, I would say, because you've been involved in the Sony World Photography Awards, Best Landscape. There's also exhibited at Somerset House, and it says recent projects are Israeli Ministry of Science, and you've done involvement, which, if you could tell us a bit about Magnum, which is a really prestigious photography agency that is still up and running, and they just had last year, I think it was like they were 70 years. So that is a real achievement. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Actually, the Magnum thing was part of a competition that they held photographer worldwide, and I submitted my work that is dealing with the Israeli landscape in a way that you asked me for what is unique about my work. So I think that there is this sentiment in my work that is combining the empathy that I have towards the place where I grew up and the country where I'm from, but it also highlight and question issues of political environment and social question that I have towards the place that is Israel. So I think something in that obviously must have worked for the Magnum people, as well as the Sony World Photography Awards in previous years, because they selected that, and I think they kind of got this sentiment that I'm talking about. If you like, I can show you. I brought my book, so I can choose an image to show. So there's one that is a key image, I think, to the understanding of the sentiment that I'm talking about. So this is one of the images that won the